Hello, welcome back to Search Sean. This is another Chat with Sean episode, and yeah, it's going to be a great one. I'm really looking forward to this. Someone who I've mentioned countless times on the channel. We always seem to feature his videos, and now we've got the person himself here. But yeah, I'll do the quick intros, and then we're getting some topics that we've kind of discussed beforehand. So yeah, obviously, if you're watching this, you probably know already, but Rand Fishkin is the co-founder and CEO of SparkToro and AlertMouse, two tools reshaping how marketeers understand audiences, attention, and brand visibility. So yeah, so thrilled to have you here, Rand. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, Sean. Yeah, good to be here.
I should say tonight actually, because it's it's tonight in London. But no, it's awesome. So I guess the best way to start this is to can you give me a quick overview of kind of what SparkToro and AlertMouse is and kind of what problems they solve, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. So SparkToro is an audience research tool. It's been around for, about 5 years now. And basically, if you want to know what podcasts chemical engineers in the UK listen to, or what websites are popular with architects in California, or what people who visit Wistia's website also do on Reddit, SparkToro can tell you all those things. It's behaviors and demographics of any describable group of people on the internet. And that data comes from clickstream sources. So we use Datos, which is our clickstream provider, basically about 10 million devices. They see every URL that's visited. And then we look at people who do X also do Y. And then we do demographics from LinkedIn, and we do some stuff with Google. We do some stuff with some AI tools for, when people enter those descriptions. All that mashup of data equals you understanding your audience better. AlertMouse, probably even simpler. SparkToro is a very simple, straightforward tool, but AlertMouse is even more straightforward. It's Google Alerts if Google Alerts were good and worked.
Yeah, which I think we definitely need. It's a great concept, as you say, but yeah, the functionality isn't quite there. Yeah, and SparkToro is fantastic. I've delved into it a little bit. And yeah, it's, especially in today's day and age, it's definitely needed. And the videos do with the data that you collect is so great. And that's why we always feature them on here as well, because yeah, you do a great job of going through it. Speaking of which, you've recently compared the modern user journey to a pinball machine, which I think a lot of us can get that. But how should marketing teams rethink their strategies around this model? How do you combat against that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is the old mental model, especially of measurement and investment, was based on the idea of clean funnel style journeys, right? That at the top of the funnel, there's a particular set of channels and there's a particular way that you should communicate about your brand, right? So it's essentially at the top of the funnel, you're supposed to attract attention. It's big picture, it's brand marketing. It tends to be on wider channels, often a lot of people think about social as being a top of funnel channel, or PR as being a top of funnel channel, brand advertising, of course. And then in the middle of the funnel, you have your getting people whose attention you got to understand more things about your brand. So that your website has a particular message on it and your content sort of whatever sells what you do. And then the bottom of the funnel, it's conversion rate optimization. You're trying to push people through the conversion process. That model worked pretty well from I don't know, maybe the late 90s into 2017, 18, 19, somewhere around there. But in those mid 2010 years, from 2015 to 2020, user behavior changed. It no longer had that clean, I discover stuff on these channels, then I mostly go to Google and search for things, and then I get to the website and I buy on the website. And that model has completely changed. People search everywhere. They do discovery everywhere. Discovery happens in Google's AI overviews. Discovery happens in well, Google Discover, right? It happens in news, it happens in publications, it happens on podcasts, it happens on subreddits, it happens on YouTube, it happens in social. And so do all three of the former, funnel stages. They all happen in all the places. Hence, it feels like a pinball. If you've ever bought something, like Sean, I don't know what you might be into, but like if you ever buy something on the internet and you're like researching it, like, oh, whatever, I'm going to a wedding, I should buy a suit. And your research process is no longer what it was 10 years ago. Like, it's just not that clean, okay, yeah, I think I'll browse around, some, retail options. I'll look at Google Images. I'll go to Pinterest. Maybe I'll go to Instagram, and then I'll go and search out all the brand retailers, and I'll visit all their websites, and I'll choose one, and I'll buy that. You and I both know that journey is like, I go to YouTube, I go to Reddit, I ask my friends, I pop into my WhatsApp group, I go to my Slack channels, I jump over to Instagram. Then the thing that finally convinced me in the CRO, in the conversion rate optimization process might have been literally a Substack. Like, it's just wild. It's totally different than it was years ago. And so this mental model that marketers have of cleanly segmenting and not siloing and siloing operations, it doesn't work so well anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, even my own journeys, like majority of them do not start with Google, even though obviously I work in the sector. It starts with YouTube or ChatGPT now or whatever. So,
right.
Yeah, it's it's proof, and also I do think obviously you'll probably work with a lot more people and meeting like clients and stuff, but especially large organizations, they've got like this legacy budget and legacy platforms that they've always gone through, like Facebook or something, but maybe their audience isn't really there anymore, or they're not always there as much as what they used to be. So they're still pumping in a lot of budget into like Facebook, let's say. Like, do you see that a lot, that the people just haven't moved on, trying to find actually where, like you say, their users are, and maybe on podcast, on TikTok or whatever,
Yeah. So, Sean, I don't know how long you've been in like marketing world or SEO world, but my memory was like back in when I first got into SEO, which was like 2001, 2, 3. The big challenge was convincing brands and business owners and products that they should get on the internet, like the internet would be a real thing, and B, convincing them that people were using search engines. At the time it was like MSN search and Dogpile and Lycos and AltaVista and Hotbot and Google. Obviously Google sort of won the search engine wars and like became the dominant player, but just convincing people to do that, like, hey, you should invest in this. And it kind of feels the same right now. It feels like we're having to have the conversation where it's like, hey, I know you just, for the last, 15 years, you've been throwing your budget at Google and Facebook, and that's been working for you. But they are great at one thing, taking credit for sales that would have happened anyway. That's what Facebook does, right? Like, if you look at how the Facebook pixel functions, it doesn't even care if the user scrolled to a place on the page where the Facebook, whatever ad or unit was. It will count that as a view through conversion, and it will take credit. Facebook's platform will take credit for that. Google is the same way, right? So like if you search for a company's brand, right? You're like, oh, you know what? I've decided I'm going to get a, Paul Smith suit for this wedding. And you Google Paul Smith suits, the top link is almost certainly going to be a sponsored ad, right? Because Paul Smith is buying their own brand name at the top of Google, because Google basically operates like the New Jersey mafia. And that, like, it's Tony Soprano shit, man, right? It's like, oh, that's a nice brand you got there. It would be a shame if one of your competitors was to rank above you. I'm afraid we're going to have to sell them that spot. Like that is literally what's happening in Google. And so Paul Smith has to buy their own sponsored listing for that. And then when the CFO and the CEO get together and they look at, the attribution of like, oh, what sent us customers? Google looks like they sent you customers. You know what? Google deserves zero credit, zero attribution for any branded search. They didn't send that to you. That person already knew that they were going to buy your product. Why the hell are you giving Google credit for that? It's insane.
It is. And it's so spot on, like what you say. And it's crazy, like when so many C-suite sort of, kind of come back of it and they're giving praise to, like, especially like places like Facebook and stuff. Obviously, one thing you do really well and what I enjoy your videos about is watching your take on the latest trends and patterns in the market share and what's going on in the market. Obviously, you've got a lot of data, like you say, you play with, but what kind of looking at the latest stuff that you've seen, what are you seeing in terms of, traditional search and AI and that sort of thing? Is there any sort of things that stand out to you?
Yeah. Sean, I'm sure you've seen this all over your like LinkedIn or Threads or Blue Sky or Twitter, if you're still there, feeds, right? Which is this like massive new, subset of people who I think Lily Ray calls them the GEO grifters, right? And, she's correctly identified, I think that because there's this new trend of AI popularity, especially in the business world, right? That a ton of people are like, hey, we can shake these people down for some money if we claim that we can, correctly show them where their brand is in ChatGPT and Gemini and Perplexity and Claude and all that kind of stuff. And if we tell them like, oh, hey, we'll get it so that when you enter this prompt or these prompts, like your brand comes up in the list. So we have done a bunch of work with Datos and published a bunch of research, which I think you're probably referencing some of those videos that I've published and some of the reports that are on the SparkToro blog, where essentially we look at the rise of AI tool usage, the number of AI prompts that are similar in intent to a search, right? So one thing that you could do if you wanted to be very misleading is you could say, oh, ChatGPT receives, whatever it is. So ChatGPT says they get, 1 billion messages per day. So you could, if you wanted to be very misleading, directly compare that to Google's 14 billion searches a day, and then say, oh, ChatGPT is catching up to Google. And that's what a lot of prognosticators do. That's what a ton of media does. But that is absolutely a lie with statistics, because that 1 billion number includes every message that's sent not only by users, but by APIs. So if you're IBM and you're sending, 10 million API calls to ChatGPT every day, they include that in their 1 billion messages. That's pretty damn misleading, in my opinion, right? Like, that is sketchy as hell. Also very sketchy is to say every ChatGPT prompt is equivalent to a Google search. Also not true at all. About 30% of prompt sessions, like a session where you have, multiple prompts, is equivalent to a search. So 30% of ChatGPT's usage has some search-like behavior. People are asking questions like, I have a wedding to go to, in 2 weeks. Where can I get a men's suit that will be appropriate for it? Like that kind of a thing. Give me a list. And many, 70% of the ChatGPT prompts are things like, hey, make me a picture of, a McDonald's restaurant inside a dungeon. Like, what? Why? Who knows? People do tons of stuff like that. Or like, hey, will you help me do my history homework? Right? And that is not, or hey, will you debug this Python code? Those things are not things you could use Google for. They're not equivalent. That is 70% of all ChatGPT use. So what we did, we sort of broke this down. We were like, okay, 1 billion messages per day. There's an average of 8 messages per prompt session. 30% of prompts have search-like intent. So that is 37.5 million searches per day that happen on ChatGPT versus Google, which has 14 billion searches per day. And so then you can compare, right? You can see like, if you make a pie chart, it's like a teeny tiny slice that you can barely see that's like 2 pixels wide, right? And unfortunately, like people just don't get this. I'm not saying, don't take this the wrong way, like John or anyone listening. I'm not saying you shouldn't care about AI at all. I'm not saying that like it's not important for your brand to get mentioned in there, or that doing, AI tool optimization or AI SEO or whatever people are calling it, go for it. Like do it. Just do it with the same level of importance that you place on Bing, right? Which also has like, a few percent market share. Just like be appropriate with it. Don't go crazy and think that, ChatGPT is surpassing. We do also do a lot of stuff about like visitation. So we will show, for example, like if you go to SparkToro and you search for an audience, you can see how many people in that audience visit ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini or whatever, versus how many of those people are using Google search. That doesn't tell you how many searches they're performing, but it gives you some sense. So like sometimes ChatGPT is much more popular with a particular audience than with another one. And that might be important to know. Like maybe in a particular space, ChatGPT is huge. You don't really care. I think this is one of the big frustrations that I have about all sorts of market research data that's just like generically published on. It's like, you see these reports come out and you're like, oh, cool. Yeah, that's interesting. What about for my business? Like for my specific audience, what's happening versus what's happening overall, right? If you see, I don't know, Pinterest usage is up 14% and you're a B2B aerospace defense contractor, are you like, damn, we need to put some missiles on Pinterest? You feel like, no, insane.
Yeah, I get what you mean, totally. Like, and even because they're interesting, right? You should really, look at them and find them interesting, of course, but you should always be analyzing and doing your own test on your own website. Because even from like, if you have a large website, even section by section behaves so differently, pages perform differently, and people finding them and discovering them differently. It's so many nuances across the entire, people kind of get carried away and then take the ball and run with it. It's a dangerous game. And then like you're saying with ChatGPT, obviously, or with any AI, large language model, yeah, it's a very small, like, obviously there's been like some studies coming out, the overlap, as you say, between people using ChatGPT or other models and Google seems to be extremely high, that people are still using both anyway. But some people are arguing, some people in the industry, that, okay, it is a very small slice, but actually the intent is so high that conversions are going to be much higher. So you should still focus on it. And like Lily Ray says, and other people are saying, well, a lot of it is just normal SEO stuff anyway. So, is there anything more you should be doing? What do you say to those kind of people?
I would say maybe I disagree a little bit with the AI is optimizing for AI tools is just the same as doing good SEO for Google. There are plenty of unique aspects to how those systems work, right? Like Google in Google's ranking algorithm, which we now understand very clearly thanks to the Department of Justice case and like all the, engineers that they subpoenaed and documents and stuff. So that algorithm is very reliant on click patterns inside of Google, right? So like, if you search for whatever, Paul Smith suits, but then you end up clicking on, I don't know, Ted Baker's website, right? Ted Baker will start to rank higher in the Paul Smith suit results, which is fine. Like that's how Google works. And ChatGPT, A, they don't know it, and B, they don't count that, right? So like trying to improve your click-through rate in Google is not going to help you at all with ChatGPT. Similarly, you could see, who was it? I want to say Ahrefs like published a really good study on this. I've been meaning to do a video about it as well, but they had this study where they were like, hey, how many of ChatGPT's recommendations, if you ask it over and over for different recommendations, how many of those brand recommendations are just coming from essentially spammy top X lists that people publish on low quality article websites and on their own websites. And they were like, oh yeah, that's like 30-40% of the recommendations. Like you can spam the hell out of ChatGPT right now and it totally works. That doesn't help you in Google at all, but it's good for AI, right? And I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this, Sean, but in my opinion,
Sorry, go on, Ray.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think poisoning AI answers is what my people would call a mitzvah. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't see the ethical dilemma. I remember like years ago, people were like, oh, spamming Google is ethically bad. Well, I don't think anybody feels that way anymore. They're all like, you know what? They're big evil corporations. Let's spam them whenever we can.
Yeah, I get that vibe. I think I saw that Ryan Law, I think from HRS, it was something like 20-odd%. I could got that wrong, but it's a percentage of pages that were like not getting any organic traffic at all, but they were being pulled in regularly by ChatGPT. So, that was interesting.
If you want to be on, the list of things that ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or Gemini, whatever, recommend. Gemini is tougher because they have Google's sort of intelligence behind them. But if you want to be in the rest of them, honestly, you can just publish a bunch of articles saying you're the best, blah, 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 blah. You're the top, blah, 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 like easy peasy lemon squeezy. I don't know. That if I were hired to do that, that's probably what I would do.
Yeah, you would. And I had Garrett Sussman on recently and he said the same thing. I mean, I think obviously like we all want it, but in the ideal world, that wouldn't even be a consideration to rank anything. But obviously it does seem to be a case at the moment. But I think like what people like Lily Ray are kind of touched upon is like, traditional SEO sort of fundamentals are still, many of them are still the case of getting yourself seen in these large language models. Obviously, there are some new differences there and the way that they rank things and stuff. But if you do things traditionally well, you're still going to have a really good chance of showing up. There's a lot of crossover. So,
sure, I think there's lots of crossover. Right? I think it's really similar to, again, going back to the early days of SEO. If you were trying to rank well in MSN search and Hotbot and Lycos, you would do, these list of 50 things, and 35 of those things would be the same things you do for Google, but 5 or 10 of those things would be things that you do differently. And, that's the way marketing is, right? Digital marketing has always been like this. The same things that you do for, a lot of the same things you do for conversion rate optimization or PR help you with SEO. Are those exactly the same practices? No, of course not.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like you say, if Google is bringing in such a huge part of your traffic, why would you jeopardize all that for going all in on AI search, for example? It just doesn't seem sensible right now. In terms of like some of the data that you've been looking at recently, what's kind of some of the standout shifts that you've seen? Like we discussed a few, but is there any sort of like large language models that are kind of creeping up, doing better? I know a lot of people are saying Gemini is really doing well now, and
they are.
Social media channels, are there any that stand out?
Yeah. So the only two AI tools that are growing, at least within the US right now, I think this is true in EU, UK. We just published the Q3 report with Datos. So you can see the state, it's called the State of Search report. You can look it up and see in there that Gemini and ChatGPT are the only two that are still growing. So DeepSeek, which had like a very big Q1, has basically, dropped back down and plateaued. Perplexity, which had a huge 2023 and 24, has plateaued and is, so small on the chart that it's hard to see anymore. Claude, which I know is popular with a lot of folks for programmatic and programming uses. And I have tried it and I like it, a lot of its analysis features. but it is not broadly popular like Gemini and ChatGPT. So look, if I had to bet, I would tell you, I think Gemini sometime in the next few years is going to pass ChatGPT in terms of usage. And I have moderate confidence, not enough to like sell all my stocks, but I have moderate confidence that in the next, I don't know, 18 to 36 months, there will be a reckoning for AI as a whole. And we're going to see a significant stock market drop because, these products, I don't, whatever. ChatGPT is not going to make 10 times as much as Microsoft in 5 years. And that's what they need to do in order to, support the funding that they've received to make their investors happy. So I think a day of reckoning is coming for them. And I think that's going to be rough on them and will trickle down to consumers, or the other way around. Like consumer usage will flatten, business usage will flatten, people will shift over to Gemini, and then ChatGPT will have a rough couple of board meetings. And I don't know, the more I read about Sam Altman, the more I'm like, I look forward to that. I think, if anyone deserves comeuppance, it's that guy. I think in the social media sphere, which I'm glad you asked about. So we look a lot, at a lot of this data as well. It has been quite slow to change over the last 4 or 5 years. Like the rise of the social platforms really generally stopped, at least in US and UK EU, in 2021 approximately. And then the last 4 years have been very chill. The only real growth that you see is a mild to moderate amount for TikTok, which I think is not surprising. And then a substantive rise for Threads and Blue Sky. Granted, Blue Sky is so small still. I think like 3%, maybe 2 or 3% of Americans are using Blue Sky right now. Similar numbers in the UK and EU. Threads is getting closer to like 15%. And probably, and Twitter, of course, has been shrinking. So Twitter, I think it's pretty easy to bet against that platform. It probably will not be a big player in the next, few years. The revenue and user growth, with the exception of a couple countries, has been in market decline. So those are sort of big trends.
Yeah, interesting. And yeah, Sam Altman, I couldn't agree more. We show a lot of videos on here about him and his contradictions from his early days saying the world's going to end if you do it, and now to it's the greatest thing, it's going to solve everything, and everything he's doing in between in his personal life, it doesn't really add up. And now they're in code red apparently because of the growth of Google and Gemini, so they're panicking. And like you say, there's only 2 ways it can go. It can either totally collapse because they haven't got the model to support it, or they put in huge amounts of advertising. So then the user experience is going to nosedive because of people are going to get annoyed with all that. So yeah, it's going to be tricky. And this is you can kind of pick up on that when they start putting out press releases saying that if the AI bubble bursts, then the whole world is going to feel the pinch because of the financial systems are all going to break down and they're all relying on AI. Like they're trying to make the most out of it so that people panic and they invest or whatever they want them to do. In terms of like the search engines, the browsers, that's why I'm interested. I don't know how far you look into that, but like obviously, they brought out Perplexity have got, their version, the Comet, and there's Atlas from OpenAI. Have you got data on that? Do you see any uptake on that? Or do you think there's going to be any uptake on that?
Yeah, I've got the data right here. So let's see. Atlas does not have 0.5% market share yet. So they are not even visible in the data. They're nobody. yeah, they're just as good as the SparkToro browser. Nobody, no. Look, people are using Atlas, but it's such a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. It's smaller than Opera, right? So like, just keep that in mind. I think so. My sort of conspiracy theory around the browser from OpenAI is essentially that lots of websites started blocking OpenAI from crawling them, which because they don't want to be included in the model, or they don't want to contribute data for free. That, you know, whatever. Reddit is like, hey, you have to pay us if you want to, you know, get all of our content to use in your training. And so OpenAI basically said, hey, if we make a browser, then when we crawl these sites, or like when people visit these sites with this browser, we can take their data. And if they try and block us, we'll say, oh, you're blocking our users. You're blocking real human beings. And so it's this Trojan horse, right, sort of scenario. That's my guess about why they released a browser and why they don't particularly care if it has 0.1% market share or 1% or 10%. Like I'm sure they'd be happy if more people use it, but they're going to push it because it's already doing the thing they need it to do, which is give them air cover for stealing everybody's content.
I think it was Jerome from OnCrawl who's come out saying he's seen that they're signing cash websites and building that sort of database of so it seems to be the case. And in terms of like I reported on recently that it was Perplexity this time who bought out Snapchat for like $400 million. I mean, I'm not down with the kids. I'm old now, but is that still like prominent? Why would they have done that, do you think? We kind of talked about it on our show about why they might have done that. But
yeah, I mean, I think my best guess is the same as yours, which is this is a small demographic, relatively small demographic, but it's a young one. And if they can encourage young people to use it, then hopefully they'll be able to create a pattern and a trend over a long life. And so, you know, have significant lifetime value. I think this is why companies in general tend to do so much youth-focused marketing, is because they're trying to attract and then addict young people to their products and their buyer behaviors, because capturing people when they're young is much easier than trying to capture them when they're older. And also capturing people when they're young means that you have many years of potential value to get from them.
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? I guess with all this change going on, and obviously people saying zero-click traffic now increasing massively, people being kept on Google's ecosystem a lot more, and the whole rest of it. Where do you see the roles of websites actually in the future? How much presence are they going to have? How many people are actually going to be using websites? And how much effort people still put into them, do you think, and their role in conversions and visibility overall?
I think they're still just as important as before, if not more so, for anything purchase behavior or usage behavior intent. Where they're not as important is the big trend of the last 10, 15 years, which is as the content marketing platform and hub, because that content consumption is happening in native formats on the major platforms that already exist. Here's a simple way to think about it. 10 years ago, we went to LinkedIn and Twitter and Reddit and Facebook, and people, brands posted their articles. Like every blog post that they put out, they put in there almost like an RSS feed. And then you would click the ones that you were interested in and you would consume it on their site, or you'd sign up for their newsletter, and maybe you'd go down the rest of the funnel and you'd purchase. Now, none of those sites send meaningful traffic at all. Facebook used to refer, I think it's 100 times more traffic than they do today in 2015. So over the course of 10 years, they've reduced all the traffic that they sent out by 99%, right? And instead, what happens on Facebook is you consume the content on Facebook. The Facebook feed barely ever shows you anything with a link because they don't want you to leave Facebook. They want you to stay on that platform. And if you want to drag people off of Facebook, you need to pay Facebook, right? So the only links that you're going to see, I'm saying only, but what I really mean is, 90% more is the advertisements that take you off to somebody else's website. Your website's still incredibly important, right? That's where all the AI tools and the social platforms and people who are investigating you are going to get answers about, do you offer free shipping from the UK? How long does the product take to reach my house? Do I have free returns on it? What's the exchange policy? Where are your stores located? All that information, which people might go to ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or whatever to get, still needs to be on your website, right? Because that's where they're sourcing it from. So just as important to offer all that stuff, but it's not, if you are a content creator, you can still put your stuff on your website. I'm not telling you not to have a blog. I'm not telling you not to have a newsletter, but I'm saying you better create that stuff and then distribute it in native format on all these platforms. Take that blog post you wrote, turn it into a single image and a, whatever list of bullet points, and make that your Facebook post and your LinkedIn post and your Reddit post and your Twitter post and your YouTube video and your Instagram update and all that. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you can just put the link out there and people will click it.
Yeah, I mean, it's blatantly obvious. Well, actually, I think they've made it clear, like on Instagram and, like you say, Facebook and LinkedIn, like if you add a link, your content gets devalued and you're not going to get any visibility organically. So on LinkedIn, I kind of put it in the comments, but it still seems to know a lot of the time, like it doesn't get the same visibility as just a photo or, like you say, a video embedded into LinkedIn or whatever. So it's definitely true. And do you think enough companies are still getting their heads around repurposing properly onto the different channels? Because I still see a lot probably doing the old school way.
Yeah, I mean, we still do some old school way, right? Because that's how we bring people to our site and convert them to being subscribers to our blog. Just because the reach is a tenth of what it was 5 or 10 years ago doesn't mean that we're not still getting value from attracting the most qualified, most interested prospects to that process. But, you are trying to overcome a huge hurdle and overcome all the platform biases when you do this. So it can make sense for B2B companies that have high lifetime value, who are targeting, very specific niches, that sort of thing. Everybody else, the juice is not worth the squeeze, right? And so, my general suggestion is, if you're going to have a content marketing effort and a significant content investment, for your brand, you should design it in a zero-click, platform native way. That should be your first goal. You can no longer treat it as hey, this is all going to exist on our website and it'll provide value that we can prove through our web analytics that drives traffic from all these other sources. That's not going to work. It doesn't work in Google anymore the way it used to. You can go look at, if you get 10,000 people's Google Search Console and you look at impressions from 5 years ago versus clicks from 5 years ago and impressions today and clicks from today, you will see impressions for almost everyone, at least everyone who's had success, have gone significantly up. I looked at SparkToro's. We have more than doubled our impressions and our clicks are down by 2/3. So more people are seeing our brand. More people are consuming our content, but they are not consuming it on our website. They're consuming it in Google search result. That's the only place they see us, right? They see us in the AI overview and in the instant answers and in the snippets and featured snippets, but they don't bother to click, which is fine, right? My job is not to drive clicks. I'm not an SEO anymore. My job is to influence people. I care about influencing people in the places they pay attention with the right message at the right time, which, that's marketing. Like,
even SEO, like, yeah, it used to be like clicks were the big thing, obviously, but for certain reasons, but that was still like a vanity metric. Really, at the end of the day, it's about awareness, and obviously you want to get the conversions and stuff at the bottom line as well. So, but yeah, that's still our job. We were just a different form of doing that, a different place, like a billboard or whatever.
Well, you were clearly ahead of me, because like when I was in SEO, for whatever 17 years, I thought my job was clicks and traffic, and like I was hyper focused on that. That's what I thought my whole job was just traffic.
And one of the really good examples of what you said is like video, for example. So we used to get tons of traffic from our videos on our website.
Right.
And then suddenly they pulled the plug and there was no video traffic. So if you didn't repurpose it on the likes of YouTube or Instagram or whatever, Facebook, you've like lost all that coverage, So that's one really good example. In terms of kind of phrase and curveballs, so hopefully you don't mind. In terms of like, I've had some discussions on the channel here recently around AI mode. Do you think that's going to become the default next year, would you say? And how do you think agentic AIs are going to take off? Do you see people like, Google Shopping have brought in these new sort of agentic sort of features? Do you think that's going to take off?
To be honest, I don't like to speculate on that stuff, mostly because who cares about Rand Fishkin's opinion, right? Like, show me the data. My take would be, don't overinvest in anything that's clearly a short-term experiment. Invest in things that you are happening, right? So what do we absolutely know for certain is happening? Zero-click trends, more features inside of shopping that give more options to people. So like, should you provide all the data that a rich shopping engine experience on Google would be able to consume? Yes, because it doesn't matter whether they end up using agentic AI for that or, no Gemini at all. Oh, it's all filtration data that, you have to submit a feed. Who cares? Doesn't matter. As long as you do the right thing for that, you're in good. I would not worry about AI mode replacing the normal Google search. If it happens, okay. What are you going to do differently? Are you going to do something differently? I don't think I would do anything particularly differently. I probably care a little bit more about those AI ranking factors. You know what I mean? Like that, whatever. Maybe I'd make a bunch of best audience research tool, shitty little lists all over the brain. Except Gemini is pretty good at not picking those up compared to ChatGPT. So yeah, I would do. Here's what I do. I would do a lot more PR, right? Like PR is the way. What I want is every publication, big media, small media, podcasts, webinars, your webinar right here, right? Like this podcast that we're doing together. I want the words audience research tool and SparkToro to appear next to each other in the transcript so that when ChatGPT or Gemini crawls it, they see, SparkToro equals audience research tool.
Well, you just did it.
There you go. I probably word best. Can you make sure that the word best is also there and tops?
No, but you're right. I mean, and that's why, I've not really changed too much. Like you say, digital PR, working close with the comms team. There are some on-page stuff like the EEAT stuff. I prioritized a bit more over the last few years, making that a bit more clear. But there's some things obviously that you can do. But like you say, it's a fair point. And if you're in e-commerce, just like optimizing your merchant fee has always been important. So if you're not doing that now, then do that.
Yeah.
Where do you believe, like, what areas do you believe marketing teams should prioritize right now, and why are those specifically? Obviously, we talked about some factors, I guess, that you would put into that, but from an overall point of view in marketing, where would you start and what would you focus on?
Yeah, I think you got to figure out you need to know your customer journey. So like we talked about that pinball machine at the start, right? There's the bumpers and the flippers and the, spots that it hits, that someone goes along in their journey. You need to know what those are and be present in those places with a message that resonates. If not, your competitors will be, someone else will be. So if you're like, gosh, when I go to the Instagram Discover page and I search for men's suits, like we don't show up at all. We're nowhere in here. Like nothing is coming up. You know what? That's dumb. Like we need to make sure that our brand is at least visible in this place, because that is a prime stop along the way. Even if we can't see the journey, we know that that's happening because we can see the data, from doing our audience research and surveys and whatever. Like be in the places your audience pays attention. I would say this is the biggest thing that most marketing teams are just completely ignoring. They're still just looking at their web analytics. They see Google in there, they see Facebook in there, whatever. They see maybe TikTok if they're doing advertising there. And so they pay attention to like a few big players, but they don't realize that all of the attention happens before they reach, a ChatGPT or a Google.
Yeah, no, I agree. In terms of like big picture, in terms of like digital marketing, where do you think are like going to be the major winners? Could be platforms or companies, and what do you think is going to give them the edge? Obviously, you probably think Google are going to be quite a big winner, but yeah.
I think people bet against Google at their peril. And that is not because I believe Google is like the best company with the most amazing engineers. No, I think they just have a huge monopoly head start. I think they managed to sort of weasel their way out of the antitrust case, which they were clearly guilty, but they managed to basically do it with no penalty. And that monopoly power and the ability to use their proprietary data to enter and dominate other fields is nearly unstoppable in my view. I think another big winner that I'm surprised about, because I think they've made a lot of missteps over the years, but I think their user base has made up for it, is Reddit. I think Reddit is going to keep rising as a platform. I think the authenticity of real human beings moderating each other and like contributing sort of the forum focus of the web. The more things get automated and spicy autocomplete from AI, the more people want some real person's opinion. And I think that's going to be a big winner. The other platforms, I suspect Threads is going to pass Twitter if they haven't already in terms of usage. Yeah, they might have already, or they will in the next year and a half, 2 years. So that if you're on Twitter, I would move to Threads, right? I wish I could tell you to move to Blue Sky because I think that's a far more ethical company and platform, but the usage is just not there. Those are sort of my big predictions.
Yeah. And do you think forums are going to have like they've never really gone away, but do you think they're going to grow in importance again because of this AI slop everywhere? People want that human perspective.
Yes, but I think it will almost certainly be big platform, Reddit, right? For right now, maybe Facebook tries to get into the forum game at some point, but I guess Facebook groups kind of does that now, but I don't see independent forums being able to survive and thrive very well like they did in the early years, right?
Yeah, I know like we have a forum at Macmillan. It does quite well for people affected by cancer.
Yeah, small private communities, right? Like a private Slack group or whatever, private WhatsApp groups, self-hosted stuff. I'm not saying it can't work. I just don't think it will not be dominant over web behavior. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I remember what I was going to say earlier actually about like people focusing on brand management, because again, I'm seeing a lot of brands probably neglect their review page or, reviews on Google, reviews on Trustpilot, what people are saying about them on Reddit and so on. I think I don't know, you agree, you're going to have to put someone there doing that now if you're not already.
Yeah. Yeah. That rep management stuff is hugely important. I think this is, we see a lot of people using AlertMouse for this, for example, right? They put in their brand, or their CEO's name, their founder name, their own name, if they're a creator, their community's name. And then they sort of see like, oh, hey, this person is whatever, saying positive things about me. I should feature that as a testimonial and like amplify that on our social channels and, reach out to them and do something nice. Oh, these people said something negative. I should react. I should respond. Or potentially like, I should just be aware that there's a criticism and maybe fix it on the product.
Which is
Sean, I apologize. I have got to run. I'm 3 minutes late for a thing, but it has been an absolute pleasure to join you for this. And yeah, I think we got some great stuff for folks, hopefully.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so I'll let you go. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Rand.
You bet. Take care of yourself.